Okay, so we'll go ahead and call to order our Community Service Commission meeting at 5:31, April 23rd, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda for today?
I'll motion.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Public comment. This provides an opportunity for members of the public to address the commissioners on items of interest in the public within commissioners' jurisdiction and which are not already on the agenda this evening. It is the policy of the commission not to answer questions impromptu. Speakers must limit their comments to not more than 3 minutes. For items which are on the agenda this evening, members of the public will be provided with an opportunity to address the board as each item is brought up for discussion. Any public comment? No public comment? Okay. Regular calendar. Item 1, approval of the minutes from the February 26, 2025 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve our February minutes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, second. Good. Okay. All right. Item 2, dog park additional project proposal. And this goes to Adam and our Public Works Director.
All right. Well, thank you, Commissioner, and thanks for commissioners for meeting us tonight for our regularly scheduled meeting. This is going to go along with just the general update of the dog park ribbon cutting ceremony that we hosted a couple weekends ago. At the end of the presentation, we can kind of circle back and just kind of give some highlights of the event or kind of what you thought from the public, anything you received from the event about the opening of the dog park. But tonight, we have with us our Director of Public Works, Daniel Galvez. There was some updates when it came to finalizing the grant scopes for the dog park, some additional funding that might be available. And he's got some proposals and some ideas on how we could potentially utilize those funds. So with that, I'll just pass it over to him, and then he'll give you his report, and you can go from there. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Daniel Galvez, Public Works Director. Number one, just wanted to say thank you, and thank you guys for all your hard work in that for the dog park, putting that together. I was a former applicant of a Prop 68 grant as well. That wasn't successful, so I was super pumped when your guys' hard work and Adam's hard work really got that taken care of here from Kingsburg. So big kudos to you guys there. So like you mentioned, we do have some additional funding as we've kind of worked to close out the project. There has been some comments that we received, some of the feedback regarding the bottom of the basin. Can you pull that picture of the basin up really quick? So first and foremost, you may have noticed I did refer to it as a basin because even though it's a dog park and even though we've done these improvements, its primary purpose continues to be a ponding basin. So the bottom portion of that basin where and this is a picture taken on Tuesday where it's starting to yellow, there is no irrigation there. There is spray heads that go. You can pretty much see how far the spray heads are going. On the bottom right corner there, closer to the tree, you'll see that it's really green there. There's a slope there that gathers a lot of water, which is why that portion is green. But we are going to have kind of continued issues there in terms of being able to grow grass because of the soil conditions that are there. Unfortunately, being able to hydroseed or sod that area out is something that we're not supportive of just because we need that basin to percolate. And so one of the things that we've asked the contractor to do is to provide us a price for a fencing around that area. And it's just a discussion that we wanted to have. If you can pull up the other picture as well, please, Carol. So it would fence off. It'd be about a 4.5-foot fence that would go around the majority of the bottom there, which is an area that, like I said, most likely would not grow any grass. Like I said, it's an area that we've had trouble in the past with weeds, with goat heads and things like that. And like I said, we're really kind of limited to how we treat the bottom of that basin. It's structured a little bit different than like for example, Erling Park. If you can kind of see how it's like it's almost 4 different basins there, but the one that's closest to 22nd, so the one on the east side, it's pretty bare. It's almost all dirt for the same reason, because that's the one that gets the majority of the water, and that's how we need to get it to percolate. So if the remaining funds that we have can cover it, This is something that we would like to see there. One of the reasons why we think this is a good idea is during rains or when we get nuisance water there, we typically have to lock the entire park up because of the standing water that's there. It perks really well, though. I mean, it doesn't hold a lot of water, but it does stay kind of soggy. I know when we opened it, if we close it or when we don't open it, then we get calls and say, hey, when are you going to open this dog park? I'm a dog owner. I know as soon as the sun's out, my dog wants to get out and run and, have a good time. We understand that frustration when the dog park stays locked for a majority of the time. Having this fence will allow us to also open the park a lot sooner after rains or whenever there's a water buildup there. So it's just something, that we wanted to propose to you guys and get your guys' feedback to see how you guys felt about it. Like I said, we're open to, other suggestions, but this I think would be, even though I understand, the want and the need to be able to throw a ball or a frisbee down to the middle of that basin and have the dog go get it. Like I said, I think this still provides an opportunity to get maximum use out of that dog park / basin. So happy to answer any questions as well.
Got it. I don't think it's a good idea. Sorry, my reasoning, how much funding do we potentially have?
We have possibly up to $30,000.
Okay. So my comments on that idea, because I get it, the park being able to stay open, that type of stuff, but the park currently has already had the people that use it know that it's closed and that it is a basin and that it's potentially going to be closed. So I don't see that being a problem. One of my big concerns is the movement of the dogs. When the dogs are in there, it's just a big circle, okay? And doing what I do with animal behavior, we need that movement, that flow from the dogs, because if we get a dog that sees another one and wants to chase and another one can't get away, or somebody can't safely get across that park, then that's a safety hazard that I see. So like when we do what's called fast cat in dog sports, it's literally putting the dog in a line chasing a bag, and that kicks them into prey drive. So if we have these fences where we're getting those types of aisles, I think that will be possibly hazardous. So I like the flow where the dogs can go up and there's movement, and even seeing some of the people at the opening where they were down in that part of the basin. I get that, yeah, we're not getting the green there, and I think that's something that the community it is what it is. You guys have done a really good job to seed the areas that can be seeded, to extend our irrigation as far as we can, and I think the community has to be a little forgiving in that sense that we can't have it green there. In a sense, like what I do with my dogs, they can care less what the texture is. Yes, there's certain coats that are more susceptible to holding certain weeds on them, like my Bichon, and her coat's like Velcro, right? And so having a dog like that, certain times of the year, we're not going to use the park. Same thing with areas in my own property. And it is what it is. But I think, this year and us dealing with the weed control and things like that, it's going to be hard, but it's not going to be perfect. But I think that there's other things that we can do to slowly start to get some of those things cleared up. Like I know on the freeway side, we have a lot of those weeds that are growing up that are blowing in. So I know ideally we wanted a brick wall there to not only for safety reasons, but also to prevent some of those weeds coming in, to make it easier on the city. And keeping that down. But we could even possibly do slats there or something, or even communicate, with the Caltrans or something to maybe keep that area more controlled, or something like that. But I don't think fencing that area would be beneficial to the park. I think people are used to it closing when it does rain. We do have the signage that, hey, it's going to close, and that is what it is. I like the free flow that we have there and the openness. observing the dogs at the grand opening. You saw that. You saw dogs staying on that side, running there. You saw dogs on this side because of that. That would really create tunnel vision for some of the animals. And that would be my concern because, that'd be my concern there with having the fence there. And then again, if there was an altercation or something, you can't get to that other side without going around that track as well.
I'm going to agree with that statement, and also sorry about that. Okay, sorry, I'll start over. I agree with Sarah, and having used the park extensively with a big dog that runs, the potential for them, especially if they're not used to it, and I know dogs can adjust, but having said that, the minute they have that momentum going up and down, the chances of them colliding with that fence area are very strong, as well as if, like she said, their high prey drive kicks in, and it may not be for another dog, it could be, there's a fair share of, I don't know right now, but there at one point was a fair share of feral cats. And if the cats are going to, they're the ones that are going to make it over that fence, right? Some of the dogs might too, but then what? Will the dog get back out? And then the other potential is that they'll just potentially run into another animal, and that could cause serious injury too. So could be riskier. So then I have a question, and I don't know if this has already been considered because we noticed it when we walked through there, it is sandy. Could we add more sand? And would that do anything or not do anything as a potential to fight with the weeds? And we took some time. We thought about could we have maybe even, because the city does do a great job, and we love having you and your staff be there. It's awesome. Having said that, how can we help? Could we maybe have a way, because it's one of those things where you start to work on the weeds, and if you stay on top of it, now I get that your team may not have that ability to do that. I get that's not reasonable. What if we could find a way, whether it's through volunteerism or a service outside of your team, to combat some of the weeds and work on that, and then in that basin, and make it more of a sandy pit?
So, I understand where you guys are coming from in terms of the fence. In terms of making it more sandy, things are still going to grow through there, and we still have to be able to get a mower and a tractor through there. So if you make it too sandy, then unfortunately we'll limit our ability to be able to get in there with the equipment that we have. And we also would need to consider any of the hydraulics of that basin being able to percolate. So in terms of the weeds, like I said, we've come up with the game plan of how we're going to treat the areas, especially around what do we call them, the playground areas, or the amenities that we installed for the dogs. Those areas would be specifically targeted for weeds. Unfortunately, some of the larger sod areas aren't going to receive as intensive of a treatment, just because we want to be sensitive to what we're putting back into the ground in our basin. So like I said, I think we've found a solution to be able to tackle those weeds around the amenity areas, around the walking path areas, are areas that we're really going to focus on to make sure we try to keep as weed free as possible. So, and like I said, I think that the purpose of us presenting this is to get your guys' input. I mean, like I said, we come up with an idea like, hey, this may be an option, but at the end of the day, we want the communities and your input to figure out what we do with those remaining funds. So.
Now, I know on our property, when we have this, I don't even know what it's called, but it just has these little claws that will run through our field that will rip out a lot of those before they blossom, those goat heads. Is that something? We just hook it to the back of our tractor and run it through our field. And that's one way that we help keep so a lot of the goat heads down. Is that something that we could run through there?
So the bottom, like I said, we have different attachments for our tractor. So like I said, we're going to do our best to try to keep everything down as much as possible there. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, because I'm just saying, because it makes sense about, it being a basin and what pesticide or what weed stuff is going into the water and stuff. That makes sense, because same thing, I don't use a lot of that
Yeah.
control, so a lot of it is manual. So that's why I was asking. And that's something where I think our community has to be a little forgiving with you guys and what you're doing, because I don't think you guys are just not concerned about it, but it is something that's going to take time if we do want. And that's something also for us to consider. I know on my property with my animals, I do things in a more organic way. It has taken a lot more time, but it is better for the animals and what they're playing on. So I think if our community also knows that we're going to try to do this with chemicals, but also more organic as well, to be forgiving with the city and your department. But it's good to know that, it is a priority of yours to slowly get this out.
I mean, not just the water, but also the animals. I mean, whatever's on the ground, it's things
Yeah.
that they're going to track.
Yeah.
Like I said, we looked at granules, like I said, slow release things, but those are things that get stuck in dog paws, that get stuck in fur, and it's
Yeah.
things that you're going to take home. Like I said, we have a special herbicide that we use around all of our basins. It's one made for water applications that works a little bit different than, like a straight Roundup. So it's one that we use. Like I said, it's not as intense as what we use, in other locations. But like I said, all of those things are things that we've considered. So
Yeah. And I think this idea that you had would, it would solve some of the concerns that are being brought up pretty quickly. But I think if even us as commissioners and as community members, if something like that does come up about the weeds, or it's something that we have to support and say, our city is working on it, our public works is aware of it, and stuff. And yeah. So
we appreciate the support. So thank you.
yeah. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Do we have suggestions for how, could we give suggestions for how to possibly use those funds?
Yeah, I know Adam had mentioned some screening along the west wall near the on-ramp for the freeway. I know that was one thing that we looked at. The other option, like I said, unfortunately, it's because it's a prevailing wage job, the money goes really quick. So one of the other things that we possibly thought of was maybe adding another shade structure. Like I said, maybe procuring another bench. It may not look exactly like the one that's on the other side, but like I said, we initially had planned for additional shade structures, but like I said, with the funding that we had, we reduced it down to the 2. But if there's other suggestions that you'd like us to look at, like I said, we'd happy to do so.
Okay.
I'm going to add on to that. We're doing the final walkthrough with the state next week, so we're kind of time sensitive. That whatever suggestions that we come up with, it's something that we can technically complete within the next couple of weeks or so, just so that we can walk through that. And so yeah, like Daniel said, just a list of whatever you're suggesting for addition to the park, and then we can take that back to the city manager and the engineering group and kind of see where we go from there.
So some things at the ribbon cutting that I heard when I was talking to people was fencing, of course. So I don't know if we could use that to somehow secure some of that other fencing that we had looked at, to maybe go towards that. The slats, that's an option too, but I think the stability of the fence on the outer perimeter would be a priority. Somebody did mention about a shade structure, maybe in one of the back far corners, possibly. But I think whatever additionally we have should go towards the making that perimeter fence more secure.
I feel like we're ping-ponging. The fence line, and maybe we've asked this and it's been answered, but the fence line along the entrance, is that a shared fence line with Caltrans, or is that our fence line?
It is a shared fence line because it straddles both of the properties, but I mean, we needed to do something with the fence. Like I said, initially, I was a proponent of having a CME block wall all the way around or some other type of fencing. Just because we do deal with a lot of issues with people cutting the fence and going through the fence. And so, like I said, our hope was to have a more secure type of fence. But I mean, if we need to reinforce the initial fence that's there, like I said, we can definitely look into doing that as well.
Yeah, some of it around that particular side, and then the one going, I'm going to date myself, where Valley Inn used to be.
Yeah, I know what area you're talking about. That area is probably the most problematic.
Yeah,
so.
body part store, and then of course the shared side with the construction company. Some of it is the unevenness, and we took pictures where like I was as tall as the fence, and I'm not that tall, and then but then a lot of it is it's just so wobbly, and like I said, on the construction side, and it's not on their fault in any way, but there is a feral cat population that lives there. So any dog with a high prey drive that sees a cat is going to try and go right through that fence. My dog has certainly tried. He's climbed a tree, and he's an 85-pound dog. It's like, so anyway, but the point I'm trying to make is that if there would be some way to, like I said, I would love a permanent resolution. That's why I was asking if maybe Caltrans would help partner in doing something permanent there, at least on that one side, because it is super expensive to put in anything very heavy duty. But in the meantime, if we can't get that done, what could we potentially do to secure all the wobbliness and the different
I know,
kinds?
and I don't mean to put this on Adam, but I know he's been successful in getting some grant funds through Clean California. They don't have any current grant funds, but I think when they have another grant program, that may be something for us to prioritize and see if we can get funding through them for that piece. Like I said, in terms of maintenance, we stay on them quite a bit to just take care of the on and off ramps, and I mean they usually hit it about twice a year, if we're lucky. But like I said, it is it's not an area that unfortunately we take care of. It's in their jurisdiction, so it's kind of at their purview to take care of the weeds out there. But it is something that we do bother them quite often about because we do want them to abate the weeds there. So I mean, not just in that location, but all the on and off ramps as well. So.
Anyone else have anything? No?
So just another question. So if you guys had to prioritize, where you guys would want the funds to go, whether it's a shade structure, securing the perimeter fence or screening the fence along the Caltrans right away, do you guys have a preference of?
I would say securing the fence, the perimeter. That would be priority one. And then possibly slats. So my order would be perimeter fence, slats, shade structure. That would be my order.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions, comments? Good. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome.
I appreciate it. Okay. Right. Item number 3, Kansas State's Phase 5, inclusive playground discussion. Adam.
All right. Well, thank you, commissioners. This is regarding the Phase 5 project for the all-inclusive play structure at the new proposed housing development for the city. In your packet, you received, that one, a rendering sent to us by the construction company or developer on what the proposed park would essentially look like. Again, this is from them. It's just a preliminary of what their proposal for the park would be. Do one more. Perfect. Okay, perfect. So this is essentially their idea of what the park would look like. A couple of the amenities that you automatically see off the bat was not only the play structure, picnic tables, walking paths, and then you see the pickleball courts proposed at the south end of the park area. We did work with MRC in Game Time. We had a couple of subcommittee meetings where they talked about coming together and developing a suitable structure for that area. They did create a rendering of what they would consider an acceptable play structure, but there were not a lot of details that were submitted along with it, and the size wasn't really suitable for what we were looking for. So tonight we just kind of I want to draw your attention to a couple of examples that they have. So we do pull up their link on Game Time to show you just a little bit of what they're thinking about, so that you can kind of see what we're talking about. All-inclusive play structures, majority of the time, have a ramp, some kind of option for a wheelchair to access the structure. And essentially, it's something we don't have in Kingsburg, and a lot of the surrounding areas don't have as well. So they have a couple of options, and again, tonight's meeting is just to kind of get a consensus of what it is, and if anything in particular the commission is looking for in regards to the play structures. But then we also want to talk about, I guess, the feasibility of having it at the park and the overall size of the structure. I think it's going to be great that we have a subcommittee meeting after this meeting, so that we can kind of go over the details of choosing particular amenities of the park, of the play structure. But this is, again, just to give you a general idea of kind of what a play structure would kind of look like in that particular area. And I'm trying to find one on here that has the ramp structure. I think it's this one. See them. Yeah, you can see it kind of on the corner there. I wish I could spin it. It doesn't let me. So I guess you could see it here, more clearly here. No, that's the tube. Anyways, it's this particular thing here. So again, the rendering that they submitted doesn't have that because it's too small of a space that's being proposed at the actual, this guy here. This space here is too small for any of the inclusive structures that Game Time currently has. So we have to go back to the developer, essentially going to them and saying that the size that they have proposed for the play structure is not large enough to accommodate something that's all-inclusive. So that should have been taken care of before tonight's meeting, but learning later this afternoon, that's kind of where it went. So we would like to have another subcommittee meeting after this meeting within the next week or so with Game Time and the developers to go over what it might look like. We obviously want community input. That's what was talked about at the last commission or subcommittee meeting, community input on what we'd like to see out there. And as far as the structure and potential add-ons, standalone swing structures, merry-go-rounds, things of that nature that aren't necessarily attached to just around the same area. So just kind of giving you that general update. It's not an all-inclusive park, like we discussed before, because of the pricing and the size and location of the park. There's no restrooms. It's limited parking. So we're going to focus on the structure itself. It's probably between $100,000 to $200,000 in scope of what it would cost us for the structure. But in terms of doing an all-inclusive park, that's some project we'll save for later down the road, potentially with the grant funding to redo Memorial Park and go from there. But like I said, just to get your consensus that that's what we're going with this. When we do have more information at the next commission meeting, we'll be able to show you some renderings or drawings of what it actually looks like, the color scheme and scopes of things that the subcommittee wanted to put together for this, and then we're able to take that and present that to council and just move the project farther along. This is obviously something that's still about over a year in development, so we've still got some time. So again, that was just the general update. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time regarding this particular park or the space that's being proposed. So, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions?
One, because apparently I'm not a very good map reader. How big is this? Is this like 2 blocks? Or like, I'm trying to figure out how long.
It's one parcel. So
one full parcel.
One full parcel is essentially, so you're looking like at a housing parcel on the corner.
I'm sorry, what?
A housing, like a house parcel, like a.
Is it like close to the size of where the pickleball courts are now that we have in?
Same similar
So
size.
similar,
The one at
okay, just so I can
Viking
get an-
Park. Yep.
Yeah,
Larger than the one at Nelson, but Nelson Park is the one with the one pickleball court and the swing structure. And then that was phase one's park, and then phase 4 is the one that's now considered Viking. It's got the pavilion,
yeah.
the play structure, and the 2 pickleball courts. Yeah,
So it's about that size?
it's about that size. yeah.
Okay.
And each phase has to have a park, correct?
Each phase it has the option of developing a park or funds allocated for green space for council's allocations later. So, but yeah, this one has come on board with one of the council members to say that is kind of something they want to include for one of the Kingsburg parks, which is nice. The all-inclusive aspect is something that's obviously new. A lot of cities are kind of reaching out to it, but pricing becomes an issue when these things are twice as expensive as a regular play structure and that we have downtown, which is about $50,000. And these are closer to 200 to 300,000. So that's kind of where we want to kind of focus. And of course, the layout will change. Obviously, we'll want to request, or we'll have to do an official request from the commission saying, hey, this size is not large enough. We need to be able to restructure the park so that we can fit something more feasible, something that, we'd like to actually see at the park that we think people would use. So.
Okay, cool. And yeah, and I think we definitely need to get the rest of the community, other community members that were at our meeting, get their input, and when we're picking out the equipment too.
I will say that having an additional park would be great, and having the inclusivity start with this park would be wonderful, if we can figure out a way to do it. Because, yesterday, I walked both parks that we just talked about to play pickleball, and we had to go to the smaller one because the big one was already in. People showed up, so it's some of it's the time of year, the weather, and pickleball's a hot commodity right now. And then so we went to the smaller park and were able to play, and then other people came, and so we had we shared, we played nice, but. The point is that having additional space, the parks are getting used. There's no doubt about it.
And it'll be beneficial to have this one on that side of the street, because the other 2 parks are on the east side of 18th. So to have one, because this is going to be on the west side, right?
Correct, yep.
That'll probably be beneficial.
It'd be nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful.
Any other
all I
comments? No? Okay, cool. So subcommittee meeting, we'll schedule that.
We'll schedule it, yeah. I'll send an email out to the subcommittee members and the members of the public that were there at the original one.
Perfect, thank you. All right, item number 4, Park and Recreation, Parks Master Plan update, Fresno State.
Yep, just a general update. Fresno State and their group are currently working on the Parks Master Plan survey. They took the comments from a couple months ago from the commission, from staff members, and are currently still revising that list of questions they want to send out to the public. We've been working with them for the last couple of weeks on gathering a list of community members that we'd like to be able to see a representative from each group sit down at a workshop together to kind of get a grander scope of what this process is going to look like once we roll it out. A target goal was supposed to get rolled out so that we could have numbers by the end of May. Still pushing that deadline, but it's getting pretty close, and to send the survey out and then to get people to respond to it. But like I said, still working with them. Fresno State has their students in the recreation departments working on potentially coming and doing some survey work, doing one-on-one, whether it's at the grocery stores, the Swedish Festival, doing door-to-door knocking, and then, of course, the online survey that'll go out and the mailers that'll go out for those who don't really utilize the email or any of that stuff. So working with them on that. Once that survey gets put together, the commission will send you the finalized survey. It'll probably be before the next commission meeting, so you will just keep an eye out on your email so that you can take a look at that. And then once we get the okay from the city manager, then we can go ahead and start sending out to the residents and collecting data. And again, this is for potentially, redoing our Parks Master Plan, but getting a general idea of where the city is going with Parks and Recreation, what amenities we're lacking, where we want to focus some attention in the next 10 years. And then also give us a general update of what we want our parks to look like, giving developers a general plan of saying this is our parks plan, and these are the amenities that you need, and this is what they need to look like. So with that'd be really great for us to have something that's not from 2002 in the books. It's something that's more current and that you guys helped create. So with that's all I have. But like I said, just keep an eye out for your email. Once I get that, we can get the ball rolling, and then the state has that grant program similar to Prop 68 that's due in August. And so those numbers that we receive from the Parks Master Plan will go to submitting applications for that application round. So thank you. That's all I have.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. Future agenda items. Does anybody have anything to put on the agenda? No? Okay. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn our meeting? And a second? Second. Okay, so 6:06. We'll adjourn our meeting. Thank you, guys.